a number of different affordable housing organizations. And so that's one of the reasons I got interested in this, is looking toward the future of Beaverton and thinking about housing and issues like that. And then outside of here, I spend most of my time working, and I'm a deputy DEA for Clackamas County. So that's me. And then next on my screen is Cynthia Moffett. And if I pronounce your name wrong, just tell me. I won't be offended, but I need to make sure we get everyone's names right. That's important.
Hi, everyone. My name's Cynthia Moffett. It's my first meeting here. I just left the Diversity Advisory Board after 7 years over there, and I'm excited to join a different committee and see how things go here. In the daytime, I am a principal at a school in Beaverton School District. And what I like to do is go out to eat and hang out with friends. So my social life is completely zero right now.
Okay, so the next I see Amanda Hoffman.
Hi. So yeah, I'm Amanda Hoffman, new to the committee, first committee meeting. I have been in Beaverton for a long time, I think since, I don't know, 17, 18 years now. And I've been a longtime volunteer with the Center for Mediation and Dialogue as a mediator there for, man, at least, I think 13 years-ish, maybe more. And outside work, I have several different hats I wear for work. I'm a mediator and an arbitrator and a consultant, and I have a legal background. I've practiced immigration law on and off for many years as well. And then I have a family growing up here in Beaverton. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And I see Cameron up next.
Just like my name is Cameron. I am on this committee for about, I think, 5th or 6th year now. Prior to that, I was involved with the Beaverton School District as a budget committee. I was in that role for about 8 years. And outside this committee, I'm a CPA. And before I started my own practice in Beaverton, I was working as an auditor with the Oregon Department of Revenue and Washington County.
Excellent, thank you. The next I see Amanda.
Hi, I'm Amanda Clark. I've lived in Beaverton for about 4 years, but I've been involved here in the city for about 9 years because I volunteered with Beaverton Civic Theater very early on, even though I lived in Portland. Outside of this committee, I was a previous member of the Beaverton Arts Commission and currently the Community Engagement Manager for Beaverton Civic Theater. And I also run a company called the Future Makers Collective. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and be part of the visioning committee and everything that is going to happen with Beaverton in the future.
Great, thank you. And Sarah?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet all of you and see these new faces. My name is Sarah Keane. I think this is my 4th year on the committee. I just keep track because of what Brian says. I just know it was around the same time. I've been a Beaverton resident for about 15 years. My husband grew up here. And let's see, my background, I am also a CPA in the Cool Club with Cameron. My background is in nonprofit and government finance, though. I spent a number of years at the Oregon Food Bank and then New Avenues for Youth. And currently I'm at the Oregon Zoo as their finance director. And when I'm not working or here, I used to play and coach lacrosse, and that was my fun times. And then I had children and they suck up a lot of that active time. So I have 2 small kiddos. So I've switched to doing volunteer work like this. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you. And Shannon.
Hello, I am Shannon Mason. I'm the Events Program Manager for the City of Beaverton. I started back in August, so I'm new to the position. I've lived in Beaverton for 3 years, and I'm also new as your Staff Liaison from the city, which I have never been a liaison to anything before, so this is all very new to me, and I look forward to learning right along with you.
Thank you. Christina.
Well, my name's Christina Lent, and I'm very happy to be joining the committee. This is my first meeting as well. I actually serve as the Public Affairs Coordinator for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue for my day job. And prior to that, I worked for the Beaverton Valley Times for 15 years, covering the Beaverton community. I was the lead Beaverton reporter when the city first had consultants come in and try to tell us what the vision was going to be for the city. And then the city council kind of pushing back and saying, we need to have the community weigh in on what the vision should be. So I was covering the visioning process in the beginning, and then I was part of one of the first action teams in my position with the newspaper, and so I helped to come up with that first list, that first iteration of what it was. I know it's changed, and a lot of things have been completed, and you guys have done some great work over the years. And then I was also, in my role there, I was helping to promote some of those goals that were outlined. And I live in the Sexton Mountain neighborhood. My husband works at base. He's a biology teacher. And so there's teaching happening in my home right now. And then my daughter is a 6th grader at Highland Park Middle School. So there's also school happening in my house. So between that and then everything that I'm doing with the fire district, I'm keeping very busy right now.
All right, thank you. Wade?
Brian, you broke up. Did you call my name?
I called your name.
Okay. My name is Wade McJacobs, and this will be my 3rd year on the VAC, and I want to welcome all the newcomers. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be a busy year for us also. It's really good to have fresh new energy. Outside of VAC, I am a retired special education teacher, and I'm now a lecturer with a educational research organization. And I am in the process of promoting a book that I just finished and is coming out this spring, which is a book to help people learn how to read. And I'm working with the Beaverton Library to develop a class to help people with that. So that's occupying a lot of my time. We've lived in Beaverton for just under 20 years, my wife and I, and our kids are now, they're high school Beaverton High graduates and are now launched. My son lives in Japan, teaching English and looking for other work, just got a master's degree at Tokyo University, and my daughter is in Los Angeles working in the advertising field.
Great, thank you. Rachel?
Hey, I'm Rachel Phillip. This is my first year on the Visioning Advisory Committee. My professional background is I'm currently a software developer. I'm working at Nike right now. In my previous life, I was an auditor at a public accounting firm. So it seems like we have some accountants in the group. In addition to that, I also have a young child, so that he takes up a lot of time and energy, which is great. And I've also been investigating how to get more involved and active, especially around issues like climate change, and sort of like thinking about the vision of Beaverton and where we should be going is what made me interested in joining this committee.
Excellent, thank you. Subba?
Hey, I've been a member, looks like for 13 minutes now. Yeah, thanks. So I'm a software engineer. I run a division at Mentor Graphics, Siemens in Wilsonville. I lived in Beaverton for about 27 years now. And because of the lockdown, I've been seeing a lot more of Beaverton because I'm a runner. So I've been running through a lot of neighborhoods and discovering a lot more of Beaverton than I had known driving through it in the last 20 odd years. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to being part of this committee. At first, I thought this is a committee of clairvoyant psychics or something, but given the name, but yeah, I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about what this committee does and contributing to it, and bringing my, I guess, the other experiences into this organization and see where it can help.
Excellent, thank you. Jen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Jen Christie, and I've been in Beaverton for 6 years now. My husband and I moved up here with our 4 kiddos 6 years ago. They are all in the Beaverton School District, which means they've all been home with me here in my studio where I work since March, which has been an interesting ride, ongoing. So I am a speaker and a writer, and I host a podcast, and I teach as an adjunct for Rochester University in Michigan and for Pepperdine University in Malibu, which has been a cool thing to get to do because they never did distance learning before at the undergrad level, and I used to adjunct for them on site. And so now, because of pandemic, I've been able to do it online and reconnect with colleagues and students, which has been cool. And I've been on the VAC since earlier this year.
Excellent, thank you. And then Amy?
Hi, one quick question. Is it okay to keep my camera off, or is that important for the point of the meeting?
If you're more comfortable with it off, I think that's okay.
Okay, I have a little issue going on with my eye right now, so.
No worries.
Okay, thanks. So I'm Amy Johnson. I just joined the visioning committee, and let's see, I have a young child, and that takes up most of my time. I also am studying environmental science via PCC right now, taking the requirements for that. And I organize with the group Sunrise Beaverton, which is trying to make the community more just and actually act on climate change. And let's see, not sure if there's anything that's specifically relevant right now to add to there. Was there anything I missed, Brian?
I think you hit all the high points, and if there's anything else you want to share, feel free, but if not, that's okay too.
Yeah, I'm just feeling nervous. It's like the 3rd day of classes this semester, so I'm like trying to get ready for something tomorrow, and I'm just like nervous, but I'm happy to be here. And I think that the visioning committee and having a really good plan for where we want the community to go is really important. And so I'm happy to be part of it. Thanks.
All right, well, I'm really happy to see so many folks here, and everyone sounds like they're engaged and ready to do some work. So a lot of the agenda, or a chunk of it at least tonight, is going to be me talking about what VAC is, and that sounds boring to, I think, probably everybody here. So if you have questions, interrupt me. Oh, and I think Lani, thank you, Jen. Lani is here. I think she's only half here from the city in case we have tech issues. So that's why I sort of bypass. I don't know if she's even listening right now.
I am listening. I'm always listening.
Oh, you're always listening. Well, do you want to share a little bit then? I thought you may have been just sort of remote and doing other things.
Well, I mean, I definitely am just on the background, but I did want to make sure that you all knew that we were recording this meeting and that we'll put the video online. So just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of that. And I am with the Neighborhood Public Involvement Program, and just wanted to say hi to everyone. It's so good to always see the faces with your names. If I haven't met you personally, it's just great to see you on the screen. So hi. And that's it. I won't talk anymore. Have a great meeting.
Thank you. So if you have questions at any point or have ideas, please do interrupt. And also for folks who are returning, if when I'm talking about things and I'm missing something, or you want to add some nuance or your own thoughts or ideas, please do it, because my presentation will only be so interesting for so long if I'm the only one doing anything with it. Okay. So I see a question from Amy about staffing change. So Amy, what do you mean by that?
Oh, just that when I was interviewing, Jemai Cherry was the person who was the staff member who was interviewing and kind of recruited me and sounded like he had really good vision. So I was just surprised when I saw that he was no longer the staff liaison. And I was just curious about that and how that came to happen.
Sure, and I think Shannon would know more about that than I would.
Actually, I will throw that one to Lani. Sorry, Lani, I know you said you weren't going to speak anymore, but I am your new staff liaison, and Jemai was very sad to be saying goodbye. I do not know the history of why he had to make that decision. So if Lani wants to throw something in, then Lani?
Sure. So, staff liaisons, we rotate from time to time. And so that was just it was just time to rotate out and bring on a new person. And we thought with Shannon's background of doing the events, with the events program, we thought that would be a good fit. And so that's really not a lot more to that other than we do tend to rotate staff liaisons that aren't, if you don't belong specifically like closely tied to a program. Like for example, the Diversity Advisory Board fits in really closely with the Cultural Inclusion Program. So they tend to stick closely with Alexis's team as an example. Does that sound like it makes sense? Wade, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering who our council member liaison is going to be, if that's been decided yet.
Another great question. So that's still being worked out. We should have that figured out for you by your February meeting. So as of today, we don't have an update for you, but I think we may have. Shannon, do you have an update from when we talked?
I know that. Well, I still just know that Councillor Hassan was assigned, but she's also assigned to another committee that meets on the same night. And so they're trying to figure out how to manage that because she feels very passionate about both and is having a difficult time and doesn't want to choose between
What's
the two.
Other committee? I bet we're better than them.
Is it a human rights?
Oh, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
Human rights.
Yeah.
And we think it would be kind of hard for her to ebb and flow out of both meetings since they're at the same time. So that's what's being worked out right now. And so stay tuned on that. But you'll definitely, Shannon will give you an update probably before the next meeting, so you're not surprised. As soon as we know, you'll know who your liaison will be.
Are we going to stick to this time slot?
This is traditionally the time slot in which it has been. And so as far as I know, we are planning to stick to that time. Brian, is there anything that you know of where we would discuss that changing?
I think that the plan is to stick to this. However, because I think when people are applying, it's told that this is the night that we meet on. And so folks, may apply differently if their schedules are different. However, I suppose if this night were to be an issue for most people, or there's another night that worked better, we could discuss with the city whether there's a way to arrange that. Because I know also, when we have city staff here and a council liaison, they're forming their schedules around that too. But if this night is problematic, we can always see what we can do.
And the length of the meeting is always going to be 2.5 hours?
Generally, it will end by 8.
Okay. My Zoom meeting said 9, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, 9?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that is a little long. We're normally done by we're normally done by 8, if not 7:30 on some nights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 9. If we're still going at 9, then we stumbled on something either really interesting or really terrible.
I just need a meal in between. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any other sort of preliminary questions about these nuts and bolts type issues before we move on? Okay, so first off, what is the VAC? And that can be answered in part by saying who is the VAC, and it's us, which is really cool. And also Shannon is going to be a big part of helping us do what we do, and then the council liaison. So the general format for the way that works is that we are the advisory body, and so we'll be discussing a number of issues and coming up with a number of ideas. And Shannon will be our connection to city staff and the city manager to help get those things done. If we need, for instance, if we end up doing a visioning process this year, which I hope that we will, we'll need to get funding. And so they'll help us set up the meetings that we need to set up and prepare the testimony for city council that we need to do in order to get that type of funding. And when we need to start arranging events and having Zoom meetings that other people can come to so we can get their opinions and formulating surveys, things like that, they'll help us with hiring people and with setting all of that up. Wade, did you have something you wanted to pop in with?
Yeah, I was wondering if you wanted me to either put in the chat or just read aloud what is in the Beaverton on the Beaverton website about from the bylaws of the purpose of the VAC.
Sure. Yeah, you can start with that. Go ahead.
It says the purpose of the VAC is to promote the city's citizen-based visioning process. The VAC is responsible to promote continued citizen involvement in the visioning process, establish, review, and update a vision action plan to be presented to the City Council for review and approval, and provide regular updates on the visioning process to the City Council and community at large. So it's basically got those three components. One is citizen involvement. And then the second is establishing, review, and update vision action plan. And the third is providing regular updates.
Right, thank you. And so that's formally what we're tasked with. And then in accomplishing that, we have the benefit of having staff with us. And that's what Shannon's going to do and what we were just talking about. And then the other person that we'll have, which could be any number of city councilors, but will be a council liaison. And they'll be our connection directly to the council. And so especially if we're preparing presentations for the council or want to get feedback from them about the way they think of something, then they'll be our sort of connection there. But then additionally, they'll be giving us information because obviously I bet very few, if any of us, attend all the city council meetings. I know I don't. And so they'll be giving us updates from things that are happening within their circles too, to keep us appraised of what's going on. That's a general structure of who we are. And then what we do is what Wade said. The whole purpose that we have really, when I think of it boiled down to just a sentence, is that we bring back to policymakers more people's opinions, right? In that the reason why we have these elected folks is because they're responsive to the public to make decisions about what we should do with public money and public resources and how we want our community to grow. But obviously that's just a handful of people. And so then they get some more people like us who are interested in doing some more work to get more people's opinions. And hopefully, if the next visioning process goes as the last several have, we'll get the opinions of thousands of people. I think the last visioning process had over 6,000 people. Shannon or someone else can correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe Cam remembers. I think that was around.
That's pretty close. Over 5,000.
It was over 5,000 people giving opinions through surveys and meetings and all sorts of events. And I hope that we can match that or exceed it with this next iteration of it.
So what's
go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. So if you have so many things from last year, is there like a compiled list, and are we going to extend that list or insert things in that list? Because I assume there's some kind of prioritization done, and someone from that maybe compress that down to some kind of a manageable list so that people can actually work on executing something from that.
That's a great question.
Actually, can I start an answer to that, Brian?
Go for it.
We're basically starting fresh. So the vision plan was put out, well, what was the date of that, 2016 vision plan? And so being 5 years later, we want to reach out to the community again to make sure our vision is still being responsive to the community. So we are right now kind of almost at ground zero in terms of what to do and how to proceed. So we are making decisions like, what questions do we want to ask people? Which people do we want to ask? how do we reach people that usually aren't reached? So we are in the phase of answering all of those questions and many others, and just figuring out how to get a reasonable semblance of how the community feels in terms of where Beaverton is going and where it would like to go. And so the kinds of issues we've been talking about have to do with how do we phrase the questions? Do we want open-ended questions? Do we want to find, how do we find the people that need to be found? What kind of groups of people are represented in the community, and how do we reach those groups? So we're really starting at ground zero on that. And Sarah, from our previous meeting, maybe you have something to add to that.
Sure. I mean, I think I slightly disagree with starting at ground zero, because I think there's been a lot of great work that's been put into it over the past 10 or 15 years, however long it's been created, and it just gets built upon. So I think there's, I think there's 5 main areas, and each of those areas kind of have like a list or some big takeaways that they want, like public services, improve mobility, enhance livability, I'm trying to find another, build community. And I think those are them. So it's kind of saying, okay, here's where we're at now. And is this still true? And going and taking a pulse of the community. I think a lot has changed in the past 5 years, and we want to make sure that the vision isn't stale, and that we're representing what's going on in the world right now, and making it really relevant. I think another key area that will be interesting in this year is the vision in the past has been developed with partners. There's a lot of goals, and Beaverton, the city staff, can't do them all. So they're kind of said, they had the big list, and they said, okay, this chunk, it looks like TVF&R should handle this, and this, the school district should handle these. And so I think that will be one role of the VAC as well, to see how do we interact and collaborate with our partners? Has that worked in the past, and is that how we want to do it in the future? And what does that look like? So that was kind of a half answer, because my daughter was in here and I could only half hear what's going on, but hopefully I answered you, Wade.
Yeah, I would just say that when I said starting at ground zero, that was meant as a forward-looking comment, because one of the things we want to consider is that we do not want to limit ourselves to either the structure or the setup that was done by the previous committee in creating the vision. So if people have genuine, fresh ideas, this is the place to start bringing them in. So we don't want to limit ourselves, is what I meant by that.
And is it a year-long process or a 3-year-long process?
So
yes, we get to decide.
That's a good question. And to sort of pull it back to a higher level look right now, the visioning committee rather will do a new outreach process once every 5 to 7 years or so. And so we're coming up on that again. The way we do it and the length is to be determined. And over the course of the next week or so, Shannon and some other folks from the city are planning to meet with city councilors. I think that's still the plan. She's nodding yes, so that's good.
Yep.
To discuss what it is the council wants from us over the course of next year. And at our December meeting, which I'll get to in a moment, we came up with sort of our general preferred option, but that's something that we're going to be discussing again, especially if in the next few weeks we learn that the city council, if it really wants to give us a green light, a thumbs up to go ahead. Okay. And so the process, I would hope that they allow us at least a year to do it. In December, we thought 18 months would be a good time frame to start with. And I'll turn your attention to the links that I put in the chat. Those might be things that you want to copy into a Word document or a place to save after this. If we were meeting in person, we'd have paper copies of these things to pass out to you, but we're not. This works well too. It has the bottom one, the most recent one is the previous vision itself, and the one above it is a link to the general visioning page, which you may have seen before when you're checking out the committee. And so if you're curious about the history or what has been in the past, that's going to be the best resource to start with, just to see what exists. And so before we get into what we're going to do, I think it's a little bit helpful to talk about what we've done before. And so previously, the way that the vision's been formatted is that there'll be this outreach period where there are public meetings and surveys and those sorts of things. Obviously, there's going to be some differences as we start now due to COVID. And also, frankly, I think the Zoom technology and other technologies can make it easier for us to reach more people, COVID or not. There'll be some differences that way. But where there may be a very large difference between the previous plan and what we do going forward is in the creation of action items and how we achieve those. So in the previous years, what would happen is after they got results of surveys and meetings, I think in essence, there's a giant Excel sheet put together of what are people saying, where are the commonalities, and then started from that creating categories of what people want to see, whether it's about transportation and issue areas like that, or thinking more broadly in terms of the way that we live, the way that we interact, the way public safety more broadly, things like that. And from there created action items, things that can be achieved that people seem to want from these surveys. I think we have, Wade, you probably have better memory than I do on this. How many action items were in the last plan? Like 100 and some?
I'm not a detail person, sorry.
Okay, well,
I think it was 118 or something.
118, yeah, a lot. And then for each of those, and those range from things like make traffic better to have food carts. And a lot of these things have been achieved. And part of the way they achieved these was by identifying what partners in the community could help make these ideas reality. And about half or so of the partners are various government entities, whether they're departments within the city or other governments, whether, Parks and Rec District, TriMet, Metro, different groups like that. And the other half are private folks, whether it's nonprofits or businesses in the community or other organizations like the Chamber of Commerce. So that 104, thanks, Sarah. That's great, 104 action items. That's a lot. And so with that, we've had some success with that model. But in our last couple of meetings, we discussed how there are also some issues with that model and that it might not be one that we want to stick to in the future and that we're open to changing it. The reason being that a lot of times, at least what we've noticed in the last few years, is that those groups, there's not a whole lot of incentive for them to actively participate. And oftentimes when we would assign somebody an action item and they'd agree to work with us on the action item, those are things that group was already going to do anyway. And so then when we call to follow up or see if they want to present to us about what they've been doing, they were very confused about why they were doing that or why we were calling. And then we'd say, oh, because of this. And then they'd kind of remember what happened a few years previous when they said they would, help out with this project. And so we're thinking that there may be a world in which we don't have partners tied specifically to action items and instead approach this in a different way, or that we still have community partners, but we rework the way we connect them to action items or connect them to the plan. So that's been of some discussion. And like to echo a little bit of what Wade said, right now, everything's sort of up in the air about how we wanted to go about this. And one thing that we've talked about in the last couple of months is about having a full council retreat. Now, obviously be a virtual retreat because we can't all meet in person, unfortunately. But if we learn from Shannon in the coming weeks that the city council is on board with us beginning this visioning process in earnest, then I think in February, we would try to find a Saturday or some weekend day or some day of the week where people can really take a chunk of multiple hours to sit through and think about the details of what we want to do. Now, the previous committee has done a little bit of this work in thinking about the types of information we want to draw from people. And I'm going to make a note for myself to, after this meeting, send you that outline. So everyone has it, we're on the same page.
Has there been any analysis done on the previous results?
Yes, a somewhat limited one because we were interrupted last year. But generally what would happen each year that we're not in an outreach year is that we're doing follow-up with partners. And as a part of that follow-up, we'd send them a survey with a list of their action items, asking them whether they've been completed, in progress, if there are roadblocks and ways that the city or the VAC can help them to complete that. And we didn't do one in 2019 because there were tech issues in that fall. And then we were going to ramp up for a new visioning process potentially in 2020. So we weren't as worried about it. And then COVID hit. So it's been a while since we've seen that.
Actually, my question was more about, is there the whole process itself could we step back and look at how the whole thing worked and if that's the most effective way to do it and that kind of thing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood your question. So I don't think there's been any sort of formal analysis as to what the best way is to engage the community, or rather to engage partners to achieve these goals. That said, we have done a good bit of work with city staff thinking about how we're going to reach out to the community. And my understanding with Jemai, and I think this will be continuing with Shannon, is that we'll be hiring a consultant to help us learn about how to reach out to the community and how to do that effectively. Not only who to reach out to and how to contact them, but also at the detail level of framing our questions and everything, so we're getting effective answers. Is that what you're, I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Cool. So yeah, we are going to be looking for professional help with that to make sure we're not just guessing, as our backgrounds as various, I guess we're all CPAs or something now on this committee, but whatever we are, trying to figure that out. But you're right. We need to have professional help, and we will.
And also at the consultant level, they will help us guide to consolidate or group our, the different action items to synthesize and prioritize them.
Yeah, that too. So then even on the back end, we'll be using consultants to help us put everything together, make sure we're doing it the right way, and in a way that gives voice to the people who answered our surveys. And then I see a question from Amy in the chat asking, were those partners were assigned action items included in recruiting participants for the surveys, et cetera? And I'm not sure about what happened with the last visioning process because I wasn't on the committee then, but that's definitely something that we've talked about doing going forward.
And
then go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in with a question. Just that I'm wondering about the hiring of a consultant and whether it will be somebody who is based in the community, because part of the reason for choosing these community members is that we have some relationship within the community and hopefully can make sure that the people we need to reach are the ones that are being reached. So I'm just wanting to make sure that the people we're hiring are going to have as much expertise as us, I guess. Maybe they know how to answer questions, but do they actually know what are the communities in Beaverton and who do we need to reach out to and how can a consultant from outside the community know that?
Yeah, Amy, this committee, as I understand it, will be part of the selection process to some degree. Shannon, you can correct me, but I would imagine there will be a request for proposal that goes out and folks can respond, and then we would somehow help in evaluating that.
That is correct.
And then in addition, I think the real benefit of the consultant is to help us with the technical stuff that we're not experts at, whether it's the tech side of things or wording questions and that type of issue. But as far as reaching out to the community, while they're going to be helpful to us, it is absolutely up to us to make sure we're talking to the right people. And that's why we want people with a variety of interests in Beaverton and backgrounds and living in different parts of the city and participating in different groups outside of the VAC, because that is paramount. And so if a consultant says, no, we don't need to talk to that person, that's not going to be their role at all. They're not going to be telling us who not to talk to or anything like that. They're just going to be making sure that we're thinking about the things that we need to be thinking about. And then you're jumping actually to sort of the next point I wanted to get into before we move on. So I appreciate that, which is that I assume that folks here probably feel similar to the last committee, but in our last couple of meetings, we decided we want to put an extra emphasis on not just getting a raw number of people to respond, which was sort of the emphasis of past outreach processes, but also making sure that we're hitting a representative sample of our population and thinking about various, whether it's an economic background, or racial and ethnic backgrounds, neighborhoods within the city, making sure that we're hitting people from all of those different groups and reaching out to them where they're already at. You know, going to meetings that already exist as opposed to having meetings that just people have to come to us. Working with our various partners in the community who work with immigrant communities and folks where English isn't always their first language and that may not be as familiar with government process and understanding that we're doing this sort of activity right now. And that's was a big emphasis for the past board, and I'm seeing a lot of head nods with people now. And so I think that's a plan we definitely want to continue going forward. And then Rachel, I saw you took yourself off of mute a little bit ago, but we sort of talked through it. Did you have a question or anything you wanted to put in?
Yeah, I was curious about, you know, at the end of this, we output this report. Partners that are not the city of Beaverton can be assigned to certain items that they agree to. But how is this document like enforceable in terms of like what the city of Beaverton does? Like, does the city and its staff use it as a guiding document? Or I just want to understand like how this document is used and like if there's any sort of accountability for the partners and people who are tied to it.
That's a great question. Wade's got his hand up, so I think he's excited to answer it.
Well, one of the questions we had was how is anything that we collect going to be used? And we actually were asking also in what format can we put it so that it's actually functionable for the city staff? Because we realized that our purpose is not to implement the programs. Our purpose is to find out what the people in the city want. And then we kind of hand that information over. So we want to be able to hand it over in such a way that it is usable. And so one of our first tasks was go to the city staff or whoever else we need to go to in the city organization and ask them, how would you like us to be reporting to you? What format do you want us to use? How do you want this information to look like? And so that's a question that we still have and I think I'm really excited that you are asking it this early on, because I think that will become a guiding principle for us to follow.
And also, just to make clear, no decisions we make are legally enforceable. We're not making laws or administrative rules or anything like that, so that we can't really hold anyone's feet to the fire in that regard. But the city staff really use this document, or at least they have in the past, and they use it not only when they're coming up with their plans and programs, but also in the budgeting process. And I've heard in some budgeting discussions, people actually trying to tie back funding to different specific action items. And I've seen staff actually thumbing through this document when they're not at the VAC, but doing other things. And so it is something that folks listen to. And if you take some time over the next couple of weeks or whenever you have time and look at the community vision, the previous one, I think you'll see a lot of those action items really came into play in the last 5 years. And you can see how much impact it does have. So, and to Wade's point, we definitely want to reach out to the city to make sure we're doing something they can use. So that way all this time and effort we're putting into it is for something.
Got it. Oh, I was just gonna ask, is there, so I've looked at the report, I've like skimmed through it at least.
Great.
Is there any shorter sort of like public facing?
There was an executive, there's an executive summary that's floated around. I know I have it in hard copy, but I don't know. I'll see if I can hunt down an electronic copy of that.
Got it. The reason I ask is just because it seems like it would be great if like, you know, citizens of people who live here had like an easy, understandable way of seeing what the plan is, and that way like get excited about, hey, I want to see this in the plan, for example. So I'm just curious if there's like any more like, not that this report is not for the public, but like yeah, like a summary for people. Yeah, exactly.
In some of with the first one, there was definitely, it was like a trifold and it was really colorful and it talked about all of the actions, the goals, and then it talked about who some of the partners were. And I mean, I think I still have that from years ago. And I'm pretty sure they did another one because those community partners that were assigned actions I know when I was at the newspaper, we referred to it, and you could see that when when the city council was making decisions to change codes, for example, to allow food carts in the city of Beaverton, you could point to the vision, you can point to that, where that was in the visioning. And so that was one of those ways that you would kind of check back, because it was a living document that was referred to.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and Rachel,
And Sarah just posted.
Yeah, I added a link to the most recent update of it, not the like our annual update saying, hey, on this item, here are some of the key takeaways, which is just a shorter version than the 20-page one. It's only 12 pages.
But lots of pictures. So hardly 12. But yeah, and that's also something that we'll definitely want to include when we're crafting our own vision. So I think that is a decent overview of what the VAC is and what it is that we do. Before we move on, and I'm actually going to flip the agenda a little bit here unless someone has objections, because elections are up next, but I think probably more important is to talk about timeline and moving forward. That way, folks who are interested in perhaps taking on a role with a bit more time commitment and responsibility will have an idea of what we may be doing over the next year. Having that discussion before elections. Does anyone have an issue with doing that flip? Wade has an issue with it.
I do not have an issue with that, but before we got into that, I was just wondering if any of the new people had some particular thing that was in their head that they wanted to make sure that we heard from them as to what their vision is for our process. I just wanted to have a space to allow the new people to say something about that if they had something, not to obligate them to speak necessarily, but I didn't want to I want to place on the agenda where they could say something as a new person.
Thanks, Wade. I think that's a great idea.
I can jump in. Yeah.
Go for it.
I should warn you that I talk a lot, so.
We all do.
Okay. So one thing I wanted to have some idea of is, do we as a committee have any, it sounds to me like we have a limited influence on what happens once things get out of our hands, right? Or do we have a continual dialogue with the council or with the city council or somebody to maybe have a little more influence on the prioritization and or what we hear as the prioritization the bigger concerns from the citizens of the city?
So yes to both of your questions. Our influence is limited after we create the vision because we're not going to be the implementing body for really any of the action items or whatever it is we want to see done. However, once we're done with the creation of the vision, the next several years we'll be doing, well, if we have partners, we'll be reaching back out to partners or otherwise doing some sort of feedback and recheck on those action items. That can be working with the council and city staff to figure out what they need to get it done or what help we can provide them or if they have questions or if things need to be augmented. And so we have a bit of influence in terms of what happens once we're done, but definitely the bulk of our influence is in setting the plan. Or the vision.
And if we do have ideas on how to execute something or implement something, we have a way forum to give that input somewhere as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so Subba, the council liaison who eventually will be assigned to the VAC, and that person ideally will be attending all of the meetings as well.
Okay.
And so there will be a council member who actually will come to VAC meetings too. And if that isn't able to happen, then my role will be partly to bring everything back to council and give them regular updates. So they are always very well informed, and you definitely have the ability to let them know what's going on and what you're thinking.
Okay. And she's in HRAC meeting, I think, right now, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, my wife's in HRAC, so I know.
Oh.
I also wanted to just clarify that our purpose as written in the bylaws is to collect information from the community as to what the community would like to see happening. It is not our purpose to engage in the actual implementation of the actions that the city council chooses.
You said it very well. Our role is advisory role. That was our job, is data collection, synthesize them, and just like it was said, the counselor present would be our in basically our connection between the WAC and the main council body, because they are attending that WAC meetings on a regular basis and are staying informed what's being collected and how it's being synthesized. And at the end of the day, our role is advisory role.
Anyone else have any thoughts that they want to share before we move forward?
I guess I'd just like to say that I think that the idea of having partners on the actions is really useful in some ways, because one thing I know is that people get really disappointed that city council can't do everything, and that some things are outside of the jurisdiction what the city council can actually do, that they're suggesting. And so if there's a way that we're able to include partners like THPRD, like that could maybe do something that this council can't do that's related to parks, for example. Like I think that including them early on in the process of even when we're outreaching and getting people involved can maybe help with their participation. I can see why you're suggesting that maybe it doesn't make sense to have partners, but I would just like to say that I think that it might be useful to keep that role of partners for implementing action items.
Great, yeah.
I think that's part of the beauty of Beaverton, is that we have kind of a spider web of partners that continually work together to tackle common issues. So you have you can just look in our community and you've got a park right next to a school, right next to a fire station, just down the street from the police department, next to, everybody is working together. And so getting everybody on the same page, I think, is definitely important in this work. And I think it will definitely continue to be something that our partners will continue to work with the city of Beaverton on.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear both of you say that, because I think that's one of the things that really drew me to the vision too, is to see that collaboration. Because, one government entity can't do very much, but when you're working together with so many partners, you can really leverage it. It's been interesting, my experience on the past few years, we have some partners come and present and see how things are going. And most often they were very closely involved with the city somehow. Like, it was mostly city staff, quite frankly. But then we also tried to cold call the person we would have listed as the contact for the partner. And to be honest.
And Sarah, I don't know if I'm freezing or Sarah's freezing.
Yes.
Sarah, I think it's Sarah freezing, right? Okay. Sarah, can you hear me? If you can hear me, okay, you're freezing up a little bit. I don't want to miss what you have to say, because I think you have a valuable insight here. Hopefully she pops back into view in a minute.
I'll just add one thing, is that I think that partners such as the nonprofit organizations, especially the ones that are more culturally competent or embedded within the community, are the ones that will also help us meet that goal of ensuring that we don't just hear from, the people who come to the city to talk to us, white people, rich white people.
And Sarah, I see you back now. You cut out for a good chunk, and I do want to hear what it is you had to say.
Oh, Zoom censored me. Oh, I cut out after cold call?
Yeah.
Oh man, sorry guys. All right, well, here's what happens is, and I get it, because I work with nonprofits all the time, and there is turnover. You have a lot on your plate, and you have your own work plan, quite frankly. You don't know that you're part of someone else's work plan all the time unless you're regularly meeting and engaging. So so we would call people and say, hey, how are you doing on these action items? And they're like, what are you talking about? So I think I love the idea of using partners and being really collaborative, but it can't be just in the beginning. And it can't just be handing them a to-do list and calling them once a year. And it's not really our role to engage them all throughout the year. So I don't know how we work with the city to, and I think those relationships already exist. So maybe it's just working, Shannon, with staff too, to figure out what makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's something that we're talking about on our end as well.
And just to clarify for folks, when we're talking about potentially not having partners, I think what we meant by that, or at least what I meant by that, was not that we wouldn't have these groups we reach out to and that we're coordinating with and working with and making sure we're contacting the community, but more in the context of how we work with the individual action items, because it's been kind of funky the way that's been working the last couple of years, and we're not sure how much we're really seeing in terms of results from that. But that is certainly not to say that we are trying to do this in an insular fashion at all. THP, other government entities and the nonprofits, all sorts of groups are going to be crucial to making sure we have an accurate and useful community vision. All right, any other thoughts before we start talking about the timeline?
I just have a question, and maybe this is something we can follow up on if we don't have that information now.
Sure.
It's just, I was just wondering if there's an overview or like a summary of like how previous collection years have gone, and like what methods have been used, like whether it's like, you know, in-person meetings, mailing out, you know, a survey, or maybe an online survey, or like just knowing what has happened in the past and like how effective those methods were considered to be, and how diverse those methods were.
Yeah, that's a really good and important question for us to talk about. I think that's something we'll get into detail on once we know for sure what the council's looking to do, and especially if we have a retreat, that's what we'll go into real detail. But sort of from a broad overview look at it, in the past, they've used a wide variety of methods. Online surveys are a big thing, and also postcards they mail out, and other things with surveys have been done a lot. There were meetings where they'd be at a Beaverton government building, whether it's the main city hall or other locations, where people would come together and they'd be led by a facilitator to talk about what it is they want to see in the future. There were folks who would go and table at community events like the farmers market and get people who are just already out involved in the community walking up and getting their opinions on a variety of issues. And then I know they also went and did presentations to various community groups that were already meeting, and with community partners who we often work with to get their opinions as well. And so I know that's what has been done in the past. And I think it's been reasonably effective in that they've touched a large number of folks, and we're able to put together these action items that people seem to agree on, in terms of, like, for instance, like the restaurant row that's developed and the performing arts center that's up and coming now. Those are big themes that came in part from these vision plans. But I don't know any metrics as to how representative they were of the community, whether it's the economic, ethnic and racial backgrounds, neighborhoods that people were coming from. And so that's something that we definitely want to put an emphasis on in this coming outreach process. And hopefully, you know, knock on wood, we'll do another outreach process this year. And when we have our February meeting and a retreat, we can really dig into the details of how we want to do this.
I think with the first one, they did have interpreters at some of the different community meetings, and they went to trusted groups. They reached out to different partners of trusted groups where people felt comfortable going, so that they weren't seeing people in uniform, or people felt comfortable, and then they actually had interpreters there. And so I would hope that would be happening this time as well, so that it's as inclusive as it can be, so that we aren't eliminating people right off the bat by having all of our surveys and everything done in just English, or just English and Spanish, and then not having anything in any other languages that are represented just in our Beaverton School District alone.
Absolutely.
Christina,
that's gonna be really important.
it's been a really big theme the past few meetings that we've been talking a lot about that. I mean, I think there's, you know, especially with the technology that's available. Meng, our past chair, said she was at a meeting where it wasn't even interpreters. It was like simultaneous, like you signed up for what language you wanted. And so you're participating firsthand in your own language. And so I think that, you know, that's the level of inclusivity I'd like to strive for. So I think, yeah, I think we're definitely thinking in that direction. And also I think, you know, Brian, I know CC is maybe meeting, one of the city staff is meeting with council this month to talk about the timing of if we do a vision this year or is it next year. And I think it's really, you know, I don't know if you'll get a chance to talk to her, but I think the timing with, you know, all the changes in Beaverton, the government structure, the new mayor, I think now is a very ripe time to start so that they get fresh information very quickly.
Agreed. All right, so unless there's something else, anyone else have anything else they want to, Jen, go for it.
I was just thinking, you know, one of our big challenges, I think, especially as we are striving to get a good representative sample, is going to be how we actually engage people. You know, like the examples that you gave, Brian, those are all really great ideas that I know we've talked about, you know, going to meetings that are already happening or community events, you know, places where people are already gathering on purpose, or where people are willing to come gather that we, you know, that we invite them to. But there's so many people who are just not going to engage that way. And I know I've mentioned before, you know, like how are we going to engage people who are experiencing homelessness, for example? You know, we're not going to mail them a card, right? Maybe we're going to email them, I don't know, but I just think that's going to be one of our challenges, is to reach the people who are not naturally coming to our events or who are not willing to accept an invitation like that, but who are very much part of the community and have ideas about our, you know, future vision. So
thank you.
I don't have a great idea about how to engage those people. I'm just saying, I think there are potentially a lot of people who are going to slip through the cracks if we can, you know, like I've been to so many community events, like when I was working with Lani as a temp in the neighborhood program, I would go to so many different events and you would see like there were kind of the usual suspects over time, right? Like kind of there was kind of a core group of people who came to everything. And I think it's great that we'll be able to engage them, but what about everybody else?
Jen, I think that's really where we're going to need to lean on our partners, right? Like, especially engaging with the houseless community. You want someone who has a trusting relationship to be having those conversations. You know, we're not just going to, and also, you know, it's tough to reach those individuals. So I think leaning on our community partners will be really important in those areas.
Absolutely, and I want to acknowledge that Amy put a couple of comments while we were talking into the chat, talking about paying people for participating, and then Sarah responded with pay and daycare. And that's also something we've talked about before. And I've got, like I said, I'll send you this big outline that's super messy, but it'll just have all the stuff in it that we've talked about before. So you can see that's something we've talked about, whether it's having daycare provided at these events so people with little ones can show up and have those taken care of while they're participating. And then also whether it is like coupons to businesses. For instance, we may be able to get like Big's Chicken to work with us, so that way anyone who comes gets a $20 gift card to Big's Chicken, or other sorts of incentives that can encourage people to participate who otherwise might. That I think all those are going to be very important tools to reaching out to folks. And I'm glad that the fact that we're having these conversations now with a lot of folks who it's their very first meeting means we're going to do really awesome things. So I'm glad we're having all these conversations. Now, unless there's anything else pressing, I do want to keep moving to try to keep us on a reasonable schedule here. Is anyone, but that's not to shut anything down. If anything else they feel is very important to add before we go on to timeline. Okay.
I do have one other question,
Go for it.
Which is, how have we approached asking questions? Like, do we just say like, what would you like to see in the city? Or have there been sort of detailed, like, here, like us or the consultants we work with, like laying out here, you know, here are categories. What do you think of these categories? Kind of kind of things?
All of it. And it's going to depend on when we're asking the questions and who we're asking the questions of, because I think we've talked before about, and also, let me take a step back. We can do anything we want. And so if you want to have these big, really open-ended questions, we can do them. If we want to have really targeted questions on certain areas, we can do that too. And what we've talked about before is having sort of a survey with a lot of different options. It might have follow-up questions depending on how people answer, or when we go out to community groups, thinking about questions where that particular group might have a particular interest and asking them more broad questions because they're more likely to give us a long sort of paragraph form answer that'll be helpful. But I think we want to do all of that. And however, whatever sort of percentages and ratios we want to do of those different types of questions, we can do. And that's one of the really cool things that we're going to get to decide is how we want to ask those questions.
Yeah, keep pushing too is like the deeper dive, right? Like not trying to get so many people. Maybe when we do some of those initial surveys is, oh, it's probably going to kick me out and my internet connection's unstable, but I'll try. Is to say, would you be interested in participating in a follow-up workshop in any of these things, you know? And so then when people are interested in certain topics, maybe they'll come back and you can, you know, understand what they were getting at when they answered a question a certain way. I mean, it all depends on budget and capacity, but that's.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. So moving forward to timeline. We don't really know, but we have ideas of what we like. And I'm cautiously optimistic that the council is going to want us to go forward with a new vision this year because it's been a while since we've had one. And like Sarah said, this is about the ideal time given all the changes that we have in the community. And also the fact that many of the big ticket action items from the previous vision have been completed or are largely on their way to being completed. So I think now's a good time to go back, and I hope they see it the same way. If that's the case, then regardless of the time frame that they allow us to have, we'll begin this year. And so that means a lot of things. That means that we need to come together to decide what it is we want to learn from people. And the previous VAC sort of got started with a template on that this VAC can augment and tailor as we want to. We're going to want to talk about how we do that, and how meaning, you know, Zoom meetings. Do we want, if the vaccine all of a sudden starts rolling out pretty well, when can we start doing in-person things, or to what degree are we comfortable with that? What community groups are already meeting that we want to have these discussions with? All these sort of things we've been talking about in the abstract over the last several minutes, we need to actually put that together. And that would need to happen probably in the course of the next handful of months. So that way, come late spring, early summer, we can really get going. Because I would think they allow us at least a year. I hope for 18 months, but if they only allow us a year to do this, we're going to have to move pretty fast, because we'll have however long it takes us to figure out all the details of what and how we're going to collect information. And then the time frame is going to take to actually collect it. Then we'll probably want to do sort of a loop back after we get the initial round of information, because I'm going to guess that we'll have questions about it. And there'll be issues that pop up we didn't really think about that we'll want to go back to the community and ask them more questions about. So we want to do all that. Then we want to compile information to figure out what it is people want. Think about the best way to put that into some sort of report or end product for the city to use and to help those items actually become realized. And then present it. And so that's a lot of stuff. And so we're going to be moving and grooving this year, provided that we're allowed to go forward with the vision. If the council decides they don't want us to, which I'm hoping is not the case, then we're going to have to regroup and think about how we can be of value to the community and to the city. Because I think right now, with the plan we have, the best value that we have is going forward is to create a new one. That's a rough timeline because we don't really know what the timeline will be, but that's what I would anticipate. And I'll turn it over to Shannon because she might have more thoughts and ideas and details than I would.
So by the end of the week, we will have done our individual meetings with the various counselors, and I'll have a lot more information to share with you after that. But yeah, at this point, timeline-wise, we just don't really know any more than you do. Yeah.
So there we are. Any questions, Wade?
Well, there are some things that we do know about timeline, and that has to do with the availability of people. It doesn't, and our own readiness. So it would be silly to start doing a reach out program in the month of February because we aren't ready for it.
Sure.
So when you think about how to reach out to people and when people are available and where they're available, that has an effect on the timeline. And so we were looking at the possibility of using summertime as a major push, as when people are out and when events are happening and things like that. And then in the fall is more like when people start settling into routines. And so there may be committee meetings that we would go to. So there are some natural processes that are happening in our community that do have some effect on the timeline. And so it's not like we have nothing guiding us yet.
True. I think the question is just whether we go forward with visioning or not. And if we go forward, then Wade's absolutely right. It'll take a few months to figure out how and what we want to do. And then by then we'll be at the end of spring, beginning of summer, and get going into summer and fall issues. Any other thoughts, questions on timeline? Okay, so the next item, and I know especially because like over half the committee is new, this can seem abrupt, but the next item is elections. And it's actually kind of important that we do this early because Shannon's going to hear back from the city council soon, and then we're going to have to get rolling. And so it would be important to know who's doing what. So we have 3 positions. The first is the chair. The chair generally will, the most public facing part of it is that they're presiding over the meeting and facilitating the meeting. Outside of that, a lot of what the chair does is coordinating with Shannon or whomever the staff liaison may be. And that means helping to get agenda set, discussing what it is that needs to happen in the upcoming meetings. When we do have presenters, talking about which presenters we need to have coming in which weeks to help us figure out whatever the thing is that we need to know. And then also going forward, we'll be giving a presentation to council about what we want to do probably sometime this spring. And that, again, will be dependent upon whether we actually are going to do visioning this year. But yeah, so giving a presentation to council and doing a lot of that back end stuff. I've never been on the committee during a visioning year or an outreach year, but I would anticipate that the chair is going to be particularly busy with helping to do a lot of logistical and organizational support for the committee during the outreach process. I think staff is going to be very helpful to us, but they've got full-time jobs on top of helping us out here, just like we do too. And so I think it's going to be a lot of teamwork with staff in order to get that done. Also, I think aside from the people in the leadership positions, we're going to rely on a lot of folks on the committee in order for logistical support as we do outreach, because we're just going to have, if we're doing it right, we're going to have too many meetings and too many things to set up and too many people to talk to for 1, 2, or 3 people to do all of it. But obviously the chair is going to have more responsibility to make sure those things are happening. So that's the chair position. Anyone, especially folks who've been on the board, want to add anything I might be forgetting to what the chair does?
I think you explained very well.
Thanks, Cameron. So there's that. Then there's the vice chair. The vice chair will, obviously, if the chair can't be there, sort of fills in the duties as far as presiding over the meeting, things like that. In the last couple of years, the vice chair hasn't been a particularly active position, but I would imagine that as we go into outreach, that's going to be a very important position because they're going to likely take on a similar amount of work as the chair in terms of organizational support and getting meetings set up. Additionally, as we go to council and work with staff, the vice chair is involved with all that too. So it's another person from here doing most of the same stuff as the chair. Then we have, is it called the recorder? Why am I blanking on this? Is that it? Is it recorder? Okay, I'm getting some head nods. And that person is sort of the third down the line. You know, if everyone else is assassinated, then the recorder steps up. But on top of that, they are going to take minutes for the meeting. And then whenever the city staff has meetings, like we'll sometimes have one with Shannon and Cece, who all may have met at a different time the other day to discuss what it is we're gonna be doing this year. They'll generally be involved in all that too. And so really in summation, those three positions are, most of their responsibilities are going to be doing things outside of the meeting with city staff, and doing that sort of background logistical support is really where you're going to be spending your extra time as the chair, vice chair, or the recorder. Does anyone have questions about those, or Shannon or anyone else? Have I forgotten anything about any of those positions that people should know? Okay.
If you are the recorder, there are like manuals available online that will tell you how to take minutes and like very detailed instructions about how that happens and all that. So there is things out there to look at. You don't have to just make it up as you go.
And the minutes, it sounds like almost all of you, or maybe all of you, have been involved in committees and various organizations like this before, so you probably know, but minutes are certainly not a transcript. Generally for an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting, it's like a page to 2 pages, maybe 3 in a really productive meeting. So it's not too onerous of a responsibility that way. Okay, with that, I think I'll give everyone a moment to think to themselves if there is a position that they'd like to take on or are interested in. And then if anyone has any questions, we can take any questions about those positions. And then we'll just see if anyone wants to do it. So we have a nomination for Cynthia for chair and or Sarah already. So Sarah and Cynthia, will you accept the nomination?
I'm sure that other people could say things too, but I'll just say that, Cynthia, I know that you have the background on the Diversity Advisory Board, and I think that would be really important for the visioning process. So that was why I put your name forward. And then Sarah, you seem to have already been involved and know a lot about the partners who have been involved in the past and would be able to get those people involved. So that's why I wrote that in the chat. Not that nobody else has any ideas of who should be in these positions. So more conversation, of course. Good.
And I will also propose that if Brian is willing to continue.
Okay. Anybody?
I would support Brian in continuing.
Well, thank you for that. Anyone else interested? Like Cynthia, are you interested in being chair? Would you accept that nomination?
I have been on the committee for an hour and a half. So I fully support having you continue and giving me a year to learn all about the Visioning Advisory Committee. And Amy, thank you. I'm super flattered.
Okay. Sarah?
I agree, Amy. I'm super flattered. I would love to be nominated for vice chair.
Okay.
I nominate you for that.
Okay, is anybody interested in being chair? And I mean that very sincerely. I am not offended at all if someone else wants to be chair. I've done this for a couple of years now. So if there's someone who's in it to win it, wants to do it, that's awesome. Does anyone want to be the chair?
You seem pretty cheery.
Is that cherry or cheery?
I was going to say super cherry too. I just want to promote you all to chair. That's it, you guys.
I think
I second Sarah for vice chair.
Process. Okay. Okay, well, if there's no one else interested, I'm happy to do it again. But if there was someone else who's really interested in doing it, I'm happy to support that person in doing it too. Because like I said, I've done this for a couple of years, and this isn't me saying, I don't want to do it, don't let me do it. But if there is someone who wants to, I'm happy to help facilitate that change, because I've done it for a couple of years. So if someone else wants their voice to do that, although quite frankly, it's not that much of a voice, it's more just work. But I'm happy to help with that. And so don't be shy to speak up or feel like I'd be offended or that anything like that. Okay. So then I guess with that, I think we'll go down the positions sort of in the rough order. So then starting with chair, I think I'm the only one who's accepted a nomination. Is there anybody else who wants to be nominated? And feel free to nominate yourself. Okay.
Permission being the chair.
So then with that, I'll just say I appreciate folks for nominating me. I'm happy to do it again. And that my primary goal as chair in the past and in the future is to facilitate the conversation so that everyone gets their voice in, because I think that's the most important way for the committee to work. And I hope you all will hold me accountable to that too, in case I'm not doing the best job of that. So I think we have to, take a vote. So let's do a quick vote by acclamation. Everyone in favor of me for chair, please say aye.
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 Aye. Hands up. Are there any opposed? Nays? No nays, so that would carry then, and then I'll be the chair. Thank you all very much. So then moving to the next one for vice chair, we have Sarah nominated. Anybody else want to nominate anyone else, or is there anyone else who would like to nominate themselves? There's nothing wrong with nominating yourself, especially with so many new people. We might not all know each other yet. Hearing none, I hear it seems Sarah. Oh, Rachel has been nominated. Amy nominated Rachel. Rachel, do you?
Rachel wants. I like Rachel, so.
Rachel, do you accept the nomination?
No.
Okay.
Not for vice chair, at least.
Okay.
Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
I had nominated Sarah.
Okay, we nominate Sarah. Sarah, did you accept the nomination?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got Sarah. Anybody else want to nominate someone or nominate themselves? So with that, I think Sarah is the only nominee. Sarah, do you have anything you want to say before we take a vote?
No, thanks. It's very exciting. Very flattered.
Okay, so all those in favor of Sarah for vice chair, please say aye. Raise your hands. Aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. Sarah is the vice chair. All right, and then on to recorder. Any nominations for the recorder? Nominating someone else? Nominating yourself? I see none. It'd be good to have one.
I nominate Wade. He's a good writer.
I cannot. I have a tremor disability in a hand and I cannot make notes quickly enough or type.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
You.
Okay, I see a nomination for Amanda. From Rachel.
I have been a recorder before, but was it the other Amanda? Because that's okay too.
I would
still am
hand it
new
over
and
to the
Oh, that's
other
right.
Amanda.
We've got two Amandas.
Yeah.
Well, would either of the Amandas like to accept a nomination?
I will decline. It's not my
Okay.
area. But.
And then Rachel was nominated. And Christina is nominated. So we've got a few nominees. Rachel, Christina, do you accept your nominations?
I would be willing to do it.
Okay, Christina
like
accepts.
My old jam.
Okay, Rachel.
I'm happy to have someone else be recorder.
Okay. So far, I think we only have Christina as being nominated. Am I missing anything that way? Is there anyone else?
I do need to ask because I believe I'm an alternate. So I think I need to know if I'm able to do that as an alternate from the city.
You can.
Shannon, do you have or Cynthia, do you know?
Yeah, I've been recorder as an alternate before.
Okay, great.
Did Amanda Clark want to? I declined, but I don't know about the other.
No,
Amanda.
I'm happy to defer it to someone else. I'd really like to, for my first year, learn and listen and yeah.
Okay. So I think we have Christina. Anyone else want to nominate somebody or themselves? Okay, so it's Christina. Christina, would you like to say anything before we vote?
I would just like to thank Jen for the nomination. And I'm happy to serve however I can.
Okay, so all in favor of Christina for recorder, please say aye, raise your hands. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Christina is a recorder. Okay. Great. So that's elections, and it's 7:59. So we're hitting it actually just about right, because the roundtable tends to be very, very short during COVID. So folks, what we tend to end the roundtable with is many of us are involved in a number of other groups outside of here. So this is an opportunity for you to share with the committee if there are events coming up or things that they should be aware of coming out of your groups, especially if it's related to the VAC, but even if it's not totally related, that's okay too. So with that, anyone have anything they want to share for the good of the committee? Did Amanda Clark have something?
Yeah, well, at the Beaverton Civic Theater, we're getting ready to launch our next round of virtual theater workshops next week, which are Time Traveler and Wizard School Online. So those are open to kids 8 to 14, and you can do the whole series for $100 over 8 weeks or $15 per session. And Wizard School is backed by popular demand, so that's pretty exciting. So if you guys know any kiddos that are looking for something fun and educational to do, that's available.
Great.
Is it Harry Potter?
I'm sorry?
Or is it Harry Potter?
Yeah, well, Wizard School is what we can do because of licensing. But yeah, it's very heavily influenced, but without directly mentioning Harry Potter.
Okay.
We make spells and wands and do fun activities like that.
Okay. Yeah, my 7-year-old will love it. So good.
Anything else people would like to share?
I think I just remind folks that I think this month there's a lot of activities for the One Book, One Beaverton. So check it out online if you haven't.
Do we know yet when the state of the city is happening and how?
It's probably going to happen sometime in February or March and virtually, but no, we do not have any final decisions yet. The new mayor was just sworn in yesterday, so they've got a lot of things to decide.
I'll add, so I am in Central Beaverton, and I attended the Central Beaverton NAC meeting. They are looking to add some subcommittees to their committee around events, arts, and sustainability. So if any of you are in Central Beaverton, I think it's the first Monday of each month. And if you're interested in getting more involved.
Great.
I do have something exciting to report. As of today, 354 of your firefighters and paramedics at TVFNR have been vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine.
All right.
That's awesome.
And it's continuing to move. So
that's great.
I'm really excited about that.
Very good news.
Okay. So with that, oh, Shannon, do you have something?
I do just want to mention that typically I will give a city update at each of the meetings, and I will also email that to you. My plan is to give you like a broad overview highlights of the city update, and then after each meeting I will send you a city update that has links to things that I've mentioned and a bit more detail about things so that you can read that and help those of you who might have different learning styles too. So you can expect to see that after this meeting as well. I will email it out to you.
Wade.
Brian, I just want to publicly acknowledge all the work you did and leadership you've shown over this last year, and thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all for tuning in today. This was like a really awesome discussion, especially for like the first meeting for more than half the board. This is great. Stay tuned to your emails. I'm going to be sending you, once I hear from Shannon, if we hear that the visioning process is a go, I'll send a doodle pull out as soon as I hear about that with the next several upcoming weekends to get a sense of who's available when, so we can start planning the retreat. My hope would be that we can pick a date before our February meeting, and then in February we can plan out, in addition to a few other things, what it is we want to talk about. So we get a good agenda set for that, that retreat, and we're all on the same page so we can go into that just ready to rock and roll. But thank you all. And so that's it. I'll see you next month. Happy New Year.
Nice meeting you guys.
Bye,
Bye.
friend. Thank
Guys,
you.
thanks.
Great to meet everyone.
I had a question for Shannon. Did they decide on the council president last night? They had a council meeting, right?
They did have a council meeting, and I will get back to you on that. I don't know what the decision was about that or if they made that choice yet.
No, they did. Somebody just kept, there was some note in there. Mitchell,
Yeah,
they said Mitchell was nominated or so.
Mitchell was last year, so she had to nominate somebody this year.
I see.
Yeah, I put in there that she was reelected for another year.
She was reelected.
No.
Mhm.
I have a question about the committee, and I don't know if it's okay to ask since most people left. I was trying to ask before you ended the meeting.
Oh, sorry, I
But
missed
we
it.
end up having subcommittees to do any of the work, because it sounded like from the packet we're not able to do work if there's not X number of people, blah, blah, blah. Can't even do Google Docs. So it seems like a lot of work, and I'm just wondering how we'll get it all done.
So that we'll dive into detail on that with the retreat for one, but as a broad overview of it, I think we will have subcommittees. I think that's something we're going to need to have in order to be organized. And when it comes to quorum requirements are really important when you're making decisions. And the legal definition of a decision involves a whole bunch of things we don't need to get into, but we don't do many of them. So we can't have an official meeting without a quorum, and we can't make certain decisions without a quorum, but we can have non-meeting events where some people are talking about certain things. And also, there is a provision for subcommittees because that's a separate body. And so under Oregon Public Meetings Law, which I don't engage with much, but I do occasionally, I would think that you would have a new quorum for that individual body, if that's helpful.
Okay, but maybe the orientation that we're going to have at the end of the month will also be helpful for that.
Yes, hopefully it will, and I'm happy to try to answer. For my office, I'm also among other things, the public records deputy DA, and so I engage with public records and public meetings a decent amount for someone who doesn't practice municipal law, and so hopefully I can be helpful in making sure our board, although the city attorney is really our lawyer for the board, but making sure that we stay within the boundaries of all that.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Bye, thanks.